head of the history department behind you, Mrs. Robinson.
Good evening. Welcome to Lourdes University for our 2013 Distinguished Lectureship Series in American History. We are so glad that you have chosen to join with us on this beautiful, balmy evening when you can be doing anything outside you want to do, or probably not. But we are glad that you are here with us this evening. Before we get started, I do need to say thank you to a few individuals. First and foremost, I want to thank the Lourdes University College of Arts and Sciences for helping us to fund this and to make this evening possible. We extend our thanks to Dr. Jeffrey Grubbs as our Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. We also want to thank the Ohio Humanities Council. They gave us a grant to help fund this evening to make this possible. So we want to extend our thanks to the Ohio Humanities. I would also like to extend personal thank yous to all of those who have helped me. Amanda Rice has been key in making this evening work, as has Helene. She's been very helpful. Carla Lowe has been helpful. Heather Hoffman has also been very helpful. These ladies are wonderful ladies. This evening, quite frankly, would not have happened had it not been for them. I want to thank them. And I would be certainly remiss if I did not say thank you to Dr. Mary Robinson, the chair of our history department. Dr. Robinson has made this evening happen for all of us. I am blessed to work under a chair such as Dr. Robinson. I think that the history department at Lourdes University is a better place because she is a part of it. So I'm thankful that she is here and that she entrusted me with this opportunity. So, I want to say thank you to all of these folks. It's now time for me to turn the microphone over to a very special friend, to myself and to Bill. His name is Dr. Gary Hess. Bill and I share something in common. Our academic father is Dr. Gary Hess. We both studied under him. He hooded both of us. We both are military diplomatic historians who have been blessed by him. And I've asked him to take the honor this evening to introduce our speaker. So Dr. Hess, if you would come take the microphone. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dwayne. The last time that Bill, Allison, and I appeared on the same platform, he introduced me. So tonight I get to introduce him, which is a genuine pleasure. Nothing is more gratifying to a professor than to be able to introduce a student who is doing very, very well. Bill has established a reputation as one of the foremost scholars of American military history. Since leaving Bowling Green with his Ph.D. in hand in 1995, he has taken an academic odyssey around the country, beginning at St. Francis University in Indiana, moving on to Weber State University in Utah. Since 2008, he's been on the faculty of Georgia Southern University, in Georgia, of course. And he's been on leave, actually, from Georgia Southern for the current year and for the next year to serve as the General Harold K. Johnson Chair of Military History at the Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. You don't get appointments like that unless you've earned them, and Bill has earned such appointments. His list of publications is very impressive. It includes books on the Persian Gulf War, study of the American military justice system during the Vietnam War, as well as study of the Tet Offensive, the Mai Lay tragedy, and he's currently working more on Mai Lay, as well as a book on the very memorable year in American history, year of great turmoil, the year 1968. So it's a real pleasure to have the invitation, be able to accept the invitation to come here and introduce Bill Allison, who will be speaking more about the Mai Lay incident this evening. Bill?
We can do that.
Thank you so much. Before I start, I'm obligated, since I work for the Army War College this year and for Uncle Sam, I have to tell you that anything I say tonight does not reflect the views or opinions or thoughts or anything like that of the Department of the Army, the War College, the Department of Defense, the federal government, I don't know, the Big Lebowski, all sorts of things. Whatever you want. It's not there, it's me. I also dress like this as a direct flaunt to the Army. Okay, but I did get my hair cut for this and shave my beard. So you got to do that around the War College so you don't fit in so much. But they're great experiences. It's neat to do this with the Army. I've done this with the Air Force a couple of times. And it's really, as an instructor, as a historian, of course, a military historian, it's interesting to kind of transcend these environments where you're with undergraduates and graduate students, but then you also get to spend time with senior military officers, who are colonels, lieutenant colonels, are going to be generals, a lot of international officers, including at the War College this year. We actually have a brigadier general from Vietnam for the first time as a student at the Army War College, which has really been interesting. But it's just fascinating to see how they view things. You students in here will be shocked that they complain about reading. They don't like to do papers, that sort of thing. And sometimes I have to pull out the cattle prod and get them to talk in class. So, they're great. I've had a great day and a half here. You've got students, raise your hands. Awesome, wonderful. You're all getting extra credit, correct? No? What are you doing here? Good. I hope I've had a great time talking to a few classes. It's been a lot of fun. You guys have been engaged and asked me good questions and things like that. It made me think about some stuff, the past day, which I hadn't really thought about as much as maybe I should have, which is good. It's a good thing. I learn from you, and hopefully you learn a little bit from me being with you. But and I hope you realize too how fortunate you are to be at this school. Lourdes is since I've been here, a very comfortable place, a very serene place, even with the nasty weather. I've just felt very, very calm, very peaceful. It's been nice. Considering the topic I have to talk to you about tonight, right? Which says something about you people coming out on this sort of night to listen to somebody talk about the mass slaughter of 500 men, women, and children. So I'm not sure what you're thinking, why you're here. But hopefully we'll get through this and you'll learn a little bit and have some good questions for me. We can talk a little bit about this and all that. Before I begin, though, let me please reiterate with Dwayne, thank him, thank Mary, and also to thank Gary and Rose for being here tonight. Dwayne's right. You are when you get to this level, you undergraduates have probably already had a professor who's influenced you a great deal, and you will continue to have that. If you go to graduate school, you'll have that as well. And Dwayne and I were both very fortunate to kind of stumble in with Gary, and we are his children. A good friend of mine who was influential with me with East Texas State, where I did my undergraduate and master's work. I told him, I saw him a few weeks ago when I was down there giving a talk in 1968, and I said, you got to understand, I am the bastard child of Joe Fred Cox, this complete East Texas hick academic, right? And Gary Hess, this Pittsburgh Pirate supporter, right? It's unbelievable. It's interesting. And this is what you get. This is what you get. But anyway, thanks for having me. What I want to do tonight is, wow. Well, we'll see how this goes.
Well, hopefully it's only the machine.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, hopefully only this. You guys hear me okay? Okay, good. I'll mess with this. What I'm going to do tonight is talk about the My Lay incident, kind of give you the context of it, the background leading up to it, where the war was at that particular point, where the particular units that were involved, what they were like at that particular point, and then get into the operation itself a little bit, talk about the trials that resulted, the investigation of the trials, and then kind of what, then kind of so what? Why should we even look at this horrific event? How many have, especially said, and not the ones who have already talked with, I know some of you are in here, but have heard of My Lay? Okay, some of you have not. All right, okay, good. This deal, just to orient you with where we're at in Vietnam, in South Vietnam. This is wonderful, by the way. This place, technology, they should. The increase in your tuition to pay for all this, worth it. Absolutely. Or the fee, whatever it was. Well, South Vietnam is divided, during the war, is divided by the Military Assistance Command, the American command, into 4 tactical combat zones. First Corps, second, third, down around Saigon, fourth in the Mekong River Delta. We're talking about right up here, right underneath the I Corps combat zone, in the second one, in Quang Ngai province, which is blown up for you here. Along the coast, Song Mi village, right in this area. Very small area we're talking about. We're only talking about a few square miles of where this operation took place. Apparently we didn't spend enough money. We didn't increase your fees. Find someone that works in the store. In terms of size, it's the projector. Yeah, it's
Oh, the projector's
It keeps turning up on us. Sorry.
You familiar with Clausewitz? Clausewitz said there would be friction. Right? Things will not go as according to plan. And the measure of the great general is how well that person deals with friction. Right.
It keeps cutting off.
Jeff, I think one of the Franciscan Center guys was out in the lobby on his laptop.
I'll go look for him.
Willing to come in and take a look.
Well, you know where it is at least. Okay? All right. We'll continue. All right.
It keeps cutting out on us, is what it does.
Just
Give it a couple minutes. Okay. So a close-up view of Song Mi village here, that little sliver that was shown on the previous map. There is My Lay 4. Now, the Vietnamese, of course, had different names for these places than the Americans did. And so a lot of times, the American and Vietnamese, okay, you got to kind of figure out, okay, the Americans referring to this, but the Vietnamese call it this. Are these the same places or not? And that causes a little confusion. But for our purposes, My Lay, the plate with the little hamlet, is right there. Binh Tay is just north of that. Binh Tay will also be a place where an incident takes place that same day. Binh Tay, just to give you a sense of the distance, Binh Tay is across the street. Okay? So we're here at the Franciscan Center, across the street, and you're in Binh Tay. And that's how close it is, across the rice paddies. There you are. The coastline, of course, right there, the Centre River right below. This gives you a sense of just a topographical view. And again, it's very much a coastal plain. There's a lot of rice paddies, a lot of canals and dikes and things like that, but also thick areas, islands of vegetation. And that's kind of what these places are, these villages are. They're islands of houses and banana trees, things like that, very thick vegetation. So you come out of this wide open space, you enter a village, and everything's very closed. Okay? So that will be important to our story. There you go. All right. Where we're at, this happens on March 16th, 1968. This is when this event takes place. We're out of the Tet Offensive. The mini Tets had not really got going again yet. There's kind of a lull in the fighting in South Vietnam. And the units that are involved, they get there in December of 1967. During the Tet Offensive, they really don't see much action. They're actually sequestered away on some isolated fire bases in Quang Ngai province, and so the fighting actually takes place in Quang Ngai City. Remember, the Viet Cong attacked most of the provincial capitals and the major cities. Okay, they didn't go after American fire bases dotted around. They mostly went after the city centers. And so these guys kind of sat and watched from a distance. They sat and could see the rockets and the red glare, right, the bombs bursting in the air and all that stuff. You know the story of Tet, right? Most of you are familiar with the Tet Offensive. It was the big. The North Vietnamese tried to take advantage, strike a real heavy blow to try to force an end to the war. Get the Americans to the negotiating table so they could get out. Okay? Undermine the South Vietnamese government. Maybe it would collapse, and that would convince the Americans to get out. Either way, try to get the Americans out. That was the primary objective. Thank you, by the way. There was a lot of controversy surrounding the North Vietnamese aspect of this. What were they really up to? Who was behind it? For a long time, we thought it was Giap's, Great General Giap's idea and stuff. And he and Ho were in it together, plotting this thing. We're slowly starting to figure out that actually, you know what? Giap and Ho really weren't for it. They were really leery about this. They thought there was too much at risk to undergo this great offensive, to do this at this time. And it was another guy, kind of the puppet master behind the North Vietnamese government, the Comintern the Politburo in North Vietnam, a guy named Lê Duan, who was the one who was really pushing this thing. Pretty brilliant, interesting guy, actually. The idea is use the Viet Cong units to attack all these major cities and stuff like that, and then the North Vietnamese army would follow in behind and secure these places. Okay? You know what happens? The end of January 1968, during the Tet holiday, the attacks take place. We had been told in America, right? America, we've been told by Westmoreland and LBJ that, hey, yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're hitting the crossover point. We've killed so many of them that now they can't replace them as much as they could. And that's where we need to be. Okay? Now notice how I said that. We've killed so many of them that we're almost at a place where we're hitting a crossover point where they can't replace them anymore. That's how we measure progress militarily. Body count. Okay? This is an age of data collection and things like that. It's all about body count. This goes back to 1965. You can go to the Yacht Dragon fight, some other fights. This is where we kind of latched on to this. Like, wow, well, if we kill so many of them, if we kill 10 or 12 of them, knock them out, to every one or so they knock out of us, if we can maintain that ratio or get beyond it, we're going to be doing pretty good. Mathematically, right, the number cruncher said this ought to work. Okay? We latch on to this body count idea as historians, that this is the main reason why we failed in Vietnam. One of the main reasons is because we got infatuated with the body count. The body count thing caused a lot of corruption. There was a lot of competition among commanders, especially if you wanted to advance, you want to become a lieutenant colonel, a brigade commander, you want to become a colonel, right, or a general, you better get an operation that has a good body count. Okay? Because that's going to look good on your record. Body count, body count, body count. You get units, extra case of beer, whatever. Competition within a company, among platoons. Who comes back with the best body count, that sort of thing. And of course, you would inflate the numbers. That happened. It had to have happened. Because some of the numbers just don't make sense. The operation for the 9th Division's big operation throughout 1969 in the Mekong Delta. I mean, they're claiming like 10 or 12,000 body count over the course of a few months. It's impossible. There's not that many. One, there's not that many Viet Cong down there. And if you believe the number, then that means not only did you kill a few Viet Cong who were there, you also killed a lot of civilians. Now, personally, I think, okay, yeah, they did kill some civilians. That happened. There's no doubt that happened. But not in those greater numbers. Which leads me to the next conclusion, that they lied about the body count because of the pressures to have high body counts. I think that's probably more of what's happening in these things. The body count is the thing. Okay? And after the Tet Offensive, as it winds down, Westmoreland et al. Are all very happy about the body count. We schwacked those Viet Cong guys. Just decimated. The beautiful thing about American military power is that it works when the bad guy is out in the open. Okay? When the baddie gets out in the open, we just bring in hell. All right? And that's true today. It was then. It's true in World War II. Massive American firepower. Artillery, air power, things like that. They're in the open, boom. The brilliance of the Viet Cong and the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, up to this point in the war, was they had not come out in the open. Okay? They were good about not doing that. But in Tet, they had to come out in the open. And we popped. Especially the Viet Cong. Now, as an aside, that's led some people to conclude that the North Vietnamese government was happy to let the Viet Cong come out into the open. So that if they did get popped, oh, darn. You got to remember, the Viet Cong, the VC, are a separate, they consider themselves a separate political entity than the North Vietnamese government. So if there's going to be a settlement in South Vietnam, you're going to have the North Vietnamese government and the Viet Cong. For the North Vietnamese government, it would be nice to not have Victor Charlie, the VC, around as much. Now, maybe that was just an unintended bonus of the way this thing worked out. I can't imagine that was their original intent, because that's a lot of effort and a lot of costs to do this. But it worked out that way. So after 68, the Viet Cong are less of a factor, right? And it becomes more of a conventional fight slowly through 1970-71 with the North Vietnamese Army, okay, which is what we're accustomed to. Conventional warfare, guys in uniforms, things like that. Not guerrilla fighters, dudes in black pajamas with sandals and rice bag and an AK-47, right? That's not what we're accustomed to. We had a hard time with that. All right. What's where we are? February, early March 1968, right? In Quang Ngai Province, the 48th Local Force Battalion, Viet Cong, very well organized. They, after their fight in Quang Ngai City, which they get popped pretty good, actually, by the South Vietnamese Army, performs very well in this thing. They flee into the hinterland, all right, back toward the coast, toward My Lai, the Song Mi village complex. It's kind of a safe haven. They've been there before. The Marines had operated there before. Task Force Oregon in late 67, early 68 had done operations around that area and had a lot of contact with the Viet Cong. So we assumed on good information that that's where they were at. Okay? This guy here, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Parker, is going to mount an operation to go into Somni and wipe out this 48th Local Force Battalion once and for all. I mean, let's take care of it. Okay? He is commanding this task force, which the guy didn't lack for self-confidence because he named the task force after himself. Task Force Barker. Right? I aspire to such arrogance. Task Force Dallas. Right? Barker's a pretty good. I mean, he's an accomplished guy. He's an ambitious guy. He wants to rise up the chain, right? He's able to piece together some units from the Americal Division. The other guy pictured there is Brigadier General George Young, who's basically the second in command of the Americal Division, the 23rd Infantry Division. It takes a lot of units from the 11th Infantry Brigade, which, again, had been in Vietnam since 1967, December 1967, had trained at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, had been there for actually a few years. And it's one of the things that people want to point to in the Mai Lay instance is, well, the unit was messed up, it was a hodgepodge, things like that, bad officers, bad NCOs. Of course they were going to commit this atrocity. I say, wait a minute, not so fast. They're really not too different from any other unit in the Vietnam War. They've got people coming and going because of the 12-month rotation policy. While they're in Schofield Barracks, they're actually basically a stopover unit. They've got guys coming from Vietnam who stay there for 3 or 4 weeks before they go back to the States. And they got coming in from the States, fresh guys just out of basic school and all that, to get trained up and even go to Vietnam and join other units. Or they're going to stay in the 11th, right, when they go to Vietnam and they get sent. That is not an unusual situation. Okay? Not at all. Not in the least. There are dozens of other units who experience the same thing. Okay? Their company commander, a guy named Medina, Ernie Medina, been an enlisted guy. He's a Mustang. You guys know what a Mustang is? Students? Negligence in your upbringing. A Mustang is an enlisted guy, okay, like a private, somebody like that, or a sergeant even, an NCO, who goes to officer school, officer candidate school, becomes an officer. So he was in the enlisted ranks and then goes and becomes an officer. Okay? It's a very different kind of breed of cat than a guy who is in ROTC here at Lourdes University. He is commissioned out of Lourdes University ROTC. Okay? Those are two different types of people, very much so. And Medina is one of these guys. He's a Mustang. Very accomplished officer, good ratings. He's a hard trainer. His units always score very high in their training exercises. He understood the situation and everything with all these people coming and going and all that. He got it. He trained them hard and did very well. He knew they were going to be going to Vietnam soon and he wanted to be ready. Okay? He's got good NCOs, non-commissioned officers, sergeants. His NCO corps was above average according to most Army standards as far as high school education, right? Their training scores, things like that, they're above average. They're from Lake Wobegon, right? They're above average. Good. Somebody. Okay. All right. So we've had some good upbringing. All right, good. So they're not, in the lieutenants they have, again, all, there's nobody at the bottom of their OCS class. They're all good, middling, or above people. Even William Calley, the main culprit in our story. Okay? Yeah, he was a junior college dropout. Yeah, he was drifting a bit when he ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, answering his draft call, trying to get back to Florida for his draft board. When he stops by a recruiting station, he gets some money to get back to Florida, and the guy says, "Hey, wait a minute. I haven't met my quota yet this month. I see you went to a military academy while you were in high school. Would you be interested in going through OCS, Officer Candidate School?" Calley was like, "Hell, I'd rather do that than get drafted." Right? Why not? Goes to Benning, goes to the training. He's not one of the guys that gets kicked out of the unit, by the training unit. Okay? He's not one of those dudes. He finishes in the middle of his class. There's no red flag there saying, "Watch out for this guy, he's got a funny look." There's none of that. Okay? Now, when he gets to Hawaii and joins Charlie Company, Medina doesn't really like him that much. Medina thinks he's a little bit soft. He's kind of like a lost puppy a little bit. Doesn't take a lot of initiative. Medina's always had to tell him what to do and things like that. But Calley is like a puppy, and he desperately wants to please Medina. He's always sucking up to him, trying to be, so they have that kind of weird relationship. And Medina got tired of him pretty quick and kind of is derisive toward him, even in front of other soldiers, calls him, Lieutenant, whatever. I can't do that because we're being filmed, so I can't tell you that. The Army would not be happy. And, so there's that kind of, but that's not unusual. That is not an atypical experience by any stretch of imagination. So that's the unit. They go to Vietnam. They do all their pre-training, stuff like that. I wonder if I hit the exit button. Will that take that long? Sorry, I was trying to get rid of that little sign. They do all their in-country briefing just like everybody else does. They don't miss anything. The units at that point were actually fairly stable as far as people coming in and out. Again, there's nothing unusual about this. Okay? Which makes what happened even more mysterious. Why was it these guys who did this as opposed to anybody else? All right. Their operation they're going to undertake. This is what it looks like when it's mapped out. You can see Nearly 4 right there. They're going to land. Charlie Company is going to land just west, push through the village. Bravo Company is going to land out here toward the coast, toward Nikkei and Calley, and they are going to collide. They're going to move up just a little bit to My Lay 1, which was commonly known as Pinkville. This whole area is kind of known as Pinkville. Mainly because of the way it was colored on the maps, not because of commie pinkos or anything like that, but just the way it was colored on the map. But it sounds good, doesn't it? And then they were going to push northward to try to flush out the 48th and push it northward out into the open to get swacked by Alpha Company, who was going to be up here. Hammer and anvil. Classic Vietnam maneuver, man. I mean, again, there's nothing unusual about this. Okay? This down here, that's the funny little sign for helicopters. So you got helicopter gunships floating around the south to try to stop the Viet Cong from heading south. Try to force them to the north. Okay? So that's what's supposed to happen. Looks great on paper. It's a good idea. Barker's happy with it. Good body count. 48's supposed to be there, a whole battalion. Excellent. Right? Yeah, extra beer. I mean, this is going to be great. It'll make me look good in the shower. This is going to be awesome. Now it's closer to what it's supposed to look like through the actual My Lay village. Push through. First and second platoons go through. The third platoon, the command platoon, comes in after, and they move out. That's what they're supposed to be doing. While it actually happens, they will actually send second platoon up to Binh Tay across the street to see if there's any Viet Cong up there. And this is a very interesting thing that I think a lot of people miss. This should have been the indication that something was wrong. Charlie ain't here. When they get there, Charlie's not there. There's a lot of firing going on here. And Medina makes the decision to send 2nd Platoon out of My Lay up to Bentay. Hey, we need to go find the bad guys. Because it seems like what we're doing here isn't what's supposed to be happening. They're not here. Go up there and see if they're across the street at Bentay. Okay? That should have been kind of a little bit of a red flag. Because you've got Barker flying around in the helicopter above this. You've also got the 11th Infantry Brigade commander, a guy named Henderson. First day on the job. He'd been with the 11th for a long time. His first day as commander. He's flying up there too. Okay? They're hearing all the radio traffic. And no one questions why Medina is suddenly changing the plan and sending this platoon across the street to Bentay. In hindsight, that looks fishy. And I think it should have looked fishy at the time. Now, as they get ready for this, they had not been in any real firefights. The Charlie Company had not been in any big engagements. They had been patrolling a lot, not a lot of contact. What contact they did have was mainly in the form of booby traps, snipers, mines. Welcome to Vietnam. That's your life. I mean, most of the time, that's what you're dealing with. Okay? And so again, not unusual. But they had lost guys. They got stuck in a minefield. Medina actually was awarded the Silver Star for getting guys out of this minefield. I mean, he was legitimately courageous. He probably should have got a little more than that for what he did. Put himself in danger several times trying to get these guys out of this minefield. This happened a few weeks before March 16th. Just a few days before March 16th, they lost a very popular sergeant to a mine. He was killed. They have a memorial service for him on March 15th, just before they brief everybody on, here's what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Okay? So we're ramped up. And you can imagine the pep talk. Let's get revenge for this sergeant. Let's get them back for the guys we lost in the minefield. We're going to finally get the chance to get these blah, blah, blah out in the open and go after it, toe to toe. None of this mine, booby trap, sniper stuff. We're going to get to go after it. Okay? Now, if I'm a 19-year-old and I've been with this unit and experienced all this stuff, and I'm armed to the teeth, and I'm in that environment, I'm probably going to go, yeah, let's go. I mean, it's an operation, man. There's fear, there's adrenaline, there's all those things that you experience, and anybody else would experience in this situation. Right? But again, not overly unusual, the circumstance. Okay? Well, they go in, they conduct the operation. Early that morning, 7:30, helicopters land, unload. Calley's first platoon, here's Calley's picture here during his trial, is one of the first ones in. Medina's command group is also in the first wave of helicopters. There's been an artillery barrage to prep the landing area. When they get there, they're expecting a hot landing zone. In other words, they're going to be fired upon by the Viet Cong, the 48th North. They get there, it's cold. Nobody there. This freaks them out. They're not expecting this. They're ramped up and ready to go. They're expecting a firefight. They're not there. They see a couple of people running. Unspoken rule of law. Somebody's running. They're a bad guy. Shoot them. So they do. They report 2 Viet Cong suspected killed. It's on the radio log. 7:35. Okay? Also with them is a reporter, a guy named Jay Roberts, who's an Army PFC. He's a corporal. He is a reporter for Stars and Stripes. He works for the Americal Division Press Office. He's there to report on the operation. Walker wants press, right? There's also a photographer, a Signal Corps photographer by the name of Ron Haverly. Haverly's there. He's got a color camera that's his own, okay, his own personal camera. He's got a black and white camera that belongs to Uncle Sam. Okay, black and white pictures will be used for Stars and Stripes, sent to the AP wire, UPI wire, Reuters, and all that. Okay, The color, that's his. All right, that's going to be important as we go through this. They get in there, and I'll show you. It's the next one. Yeah, this is Me Lay from the air. This was actually taken the year before, 1967, just part of general reconnaissance, aerial reconnaissance. An island of vegetation amidst a sea of rice paddies. So you land right out here. There's a lot of smoke and stuff because of the artillery barrage. Some of the shells went wrong and landed back here and probably did injure, if not kill, some people. It's one of the things they'll try to blame this on later. Yeah, we lost 20, 25 civilians killed because of the artillery barrage. That's what they tried to say. And it made sense. Okay? I mean, it jived with what had happened early that morning, 2 or 3. But once you get in here, you can't see. Your field of vision is very short. 10 yards, maybe 15 at the most. Okay? You're expecting the bad guys to be around there. Your tents, all that stuff. You're going in and you hear a bunch of firing, a bunch of M16s firing over here, but you can't see what they're doing or what they're shooting at. All right? Now, one of the big questions is, why didn't somebody stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, all I hear are M16s and the occasional .45 pistol. Where's the AK-47? Where's the SKS? Those weapons make different sounds when fired than an M16 does. There's a very distinct difference between the two. So that's something we wonder about. Why didn't somebody notice that? Who knows? I mean, the situation, the tense, whatever. But they didn't pick up on it. But you go in there and you can't see. So I think there's a lot of guys who did not participate in any of the killing, who didn't figure out that there was killing going on until they rounded a corner and saw a pile of corpses. Okay? And by then it was too late. And I think they're sincere in their testimony, saying, man, I didn't know until, we heard firing and we were, and then suddenly there it was. And by then it was too late. We couldn't do anything about it. Then the next question is, well, why didn't you report this? Are you kidding? I'm not going to do all that paperwork. I'm not going to get in trouble. I'm not going to be the guy that gets fragged. I wasn't going to do that. Also, unfortunately, understandable. The guys that do see it, okay, and again, it's not one group that's doing all the killing. There's about 26 to 30 guys who kill. Okay? Who kill unarmed civilians who are involved in it. They're not all one big mass. There's 5 or 6 here, there's 6 or 7 here, a few over here. Okay? So, it's not an organized killing spree. It's isolated incidents of killing. The biggest group, of course, unfortunately, is Calley's. Calley's got 4 or 5 guys with him, and in his mind, the way he interpreted the orders, the way he interpreted, let's wipe this place out, was to literally kill everybody he saw. In the interest of body count, but that's the way his simple mind interpreted the orders. That's not what was intended. But then when he takes his lie detector test during his trial, they ask him several times, variations, did you intend for Calley et al. To kill women and children? He answers no. Flatline, truthfully. Okay? The one thing that he did get tripped up on the lie detector test, though, was when they asked him, when did you realize that these killings were taking place? He always claimed that he didn't realize until it was like at 10:30, 11 o'clock, later. By then it was too late. And he issued a ceasefire. Okay? When they asked him on the lie detector deal, it was very smart how they did this. His trial, his F. Lee Bailey, right? Right? O.J. Simpson fame, sir. He was his lawyer, man. Guy was good for a long time. And the trial counsel for the Army, Major Eckert, Bill Eckert, they agreed. We're going to ask this question. Start at the previous day in time increments. I told some of the classes this. Did you know that killing was going on at this particular time? 8 o'clock to 9:30 the night before. And they did that. They started that early to establish a flatline foundation. So he's telling the truth. Okay? 8 o'clock the morning of the 16th, 8 to 9:30. Did you realize, same question, same ask, the way it's asked, same person asking it, the killing is going on? No. The thing went off the charts. Okay? Unfortunately, that's inadmissible as evidence. Because he did not then say, I realized killing was going on. If he had said that, that would have been admissible in the trial, but the results of the lie detector test itself were not admissible. Okay? But that's so it shows that he knew. He at least knew that it was happening. And it wasn't until 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later, that he issued a ceasefire order. Okay? So that's kind of the sketchy thing there. The other problem you have in the evidence when they start investigating this, and they don't investigate till a year later. It takes that long for this to become known. It's covered up for that long. The guys who said they saw stuff and saw specific people doing stuff. The problem is with the testimony, it's like we all saw the car wreck outside. And we've got 60 different stories. We all saw a car wreck. We can agree on that. But we've all got a different variation of that, right? And that's what happens here. It's very rare that you get more than 2 or 3 people who can corroborate a single story, a single incident of a guy pulling a trigger. Okay? So that makes it very difficult to prosecute when they come to the trials. That's one of the reasons why so many of these guys who were involved, who were charged, are not convicted. Calley's the only one that ends up being convicted of actual killing. There's enough evidence on him. It was actually a pretty easy, even though his trial lasted forever. It's one of the longest courts-martial in American history. It was pretty there's lots of evidence against him. Everybody else, the accusations of rape, the accusations of individual killings and things like that, very difficult to corroborate. The other problem you have, too, is some of the people who should have been charged, they were rotated out of service by the time this all came to trial, they investigated it. There's no statute of limitations on them specifically, but then, if you are out of service, honorably discharged, you are not held liable for any crime you may have committed while in service. Okay? They couldn't do anything to those guys. They couldn't touch them. And if you're one of those guys, you're called to testify. A lot of them hated the Army. They were very bitter about their experience, stuff like, other witnesses who were already out who were called to testify. You just get all sorts of different stories. So it's almost impossible to find 100% truth in this incident. Okay? It's amazing we know what we do know, actually, when you think about it. Some of the evidence we rely on during the investigations. Now, again, this is covered up pretty quickly at Medina's level. Henderson knows something went wrong, but I don't think he really understands the scale of it. Okay, he actually orders an investigation. It's a pretty shoddy investigation. Barker says, what are you talking about? We killed 128 Viet Cong. That's our number. 28 civilians were caught in crossfire or in the artillery barrage. Unfortunate, but again, not too unusual. All right? And that's what's in the New York Times the next day. That's what's in his after-action report a month later. That's his story. He's sticking to it. Barker gets killed in a helicopter crash in mid-1969. So one of your chief suspects, someone who's involved, someone who should have known, someone who's flying around above and can see, by the time this is known to the public and investigated, is gone. Okay? But Henderson clearly sees that something's amiss. He's a new brigade commander. He wants to rise through the ranks. He doesn't want any stain on his record. Let's check this out. Let's just, it doesn't, okay, it's all right. He actually orders Medina to go back, bring Charlie Company back into My Lai later that afternoon, late in the afternoon. They had already been out. And as Medina's about to turn to bring them back in, very interesting, Major General Samuel Coster, who's the commanding general of the Americal Division, he overhears this order on the radio net and he personally countermands it. Now, he claims he did it because it's too dangerous. We still don't know where these Viet Cong are. We still don't know for sure where the bulk of the 48th Battalion is. They may have moved back into My Lai. And we don't want to walk back into them unprotected. We're not set up for this. The operation has already moved on. And that actually makes sense. I mean, that's actually pretty sound military judgment. But you can't help but wonder, he doesn't want them to go back because he's afraid of what they're going to find. As long as he doesn't know, all right, you can't help but wonder that. What they did when they interviewed guys and interrogated guys, the Army CID and the Peers Inquiry a year and a half later, is they used that same picture that I just showed you of My Lai, and they had the guys, you can see the writing here, they had each guy say, okay, where were you at a given time, where did you move, trying to figure out where everybody was at. So this guy was in 2nd Platoon, and you can see he went up across the street to Ben Tay, and came back down into My Lai later that morning. So he was involved in whatever, or must have seen, the killings that were alleged to have taken place in Ben Tay. We think that probably anywhere from 60 to 70 civilians were killed in Ben Tay. That's part of that 504 total. Okay? This one is, and I'm going to wrap up here in a second because I want you guys to ask me some questions. A lot of questions, actually. Then I want you to buy a book so I can get more pizza. This one is Hugh Thompson's. Helicopter pilot. Heard of Hugh Thompson? Mm-hmm. Hugh Thompson and his two other crew members flying around in a bubble, UH-23 helicopter, small helicopter. Spotters, basically. They got a gun, they got a couple of guns, but they're spotters. And they were patrolling down here. And when he's flying around, they start to notice some things happen. They see Ernie Medina shoot a woman. Now, Medina said, yes, I shot her. She looked like she was wounded. She was approaching us. She was laying on the ground crawling. It looked like she was reaching for something. We thought it was a grenade. I instinctively shot her. Okay? Now, he's charged with that killing, but acquitted for that. That made sense. It was not, unfortunate. Other guys said, no, he walked right up to her and popped her in the head. Thompson and his crew saw him from the air, about 500 feet above the air, shoot this woman, which is incredible. But they reported it, separately. Okay, so it's in an independent corroboration that incident happened. They will start seeing clumps of bodies that don't look right. They don't look like Charlie. They look like just regular, mama sons and papa sons and some kids. It doesn't make sense. They see these ditches that have some people in them. And he notices a group of American soldiers herding up a group of people, about 40 or 50 people, and pushing them toward a ditch. He lands his helicopter in between the people and the soldiers. Gets out, confronts the guy there, who in this case, I think the first instance, it was actually Calley. Hey, what are you doing? What's going on? And Calley told him, you're interfering with an operation, get the heck out of here. What are you doing? Right? Thompson gets back in, takes off, very concerned, wondering. They turn around and they look out and they see Calley and a couple of his guys start to mow down these people in the ditch. And that's what they do. They see another group land. In this instance, it's another group of soldiers who are about to shoot some people. Lands in between them. In this instance, he has his door gunner, Larry Colburn, training his gun on the American soldiers and gives him a direct order. I'm going to get out and talk to these guys. If they make any move to shoot these civilians, shoot them. That's a pretty serious deal. Okay? Lands, makes a deal with the guy who's able to they go away. They probably went to go kill somewhere else. Right? That's how this thing was. He calls in a couple other bigger helicopters, some Hueys, 2 Hueys to come in and pick a bunch of these people up, especially the kids, and get them out of there. They go refuel, come back. He's looking around. Somehow they notice in a pile of bodies in the ditch, some movements. They think there's somebody alive in there. They land, get out. Colburn and Andreotti get out and crawl around amongst the corpses, this gory scene, and find, I think it was a 3-year-old kid who's alive. They don't know if he's wounded or not because he's covered with, gut, right? Blood and everything. They get the kid, pop off, and they go to Quinine City to the hospital there, drop him off. Turns out he's okay. They will actually reunite in the late 1990s when Coburn and Thompson go back to My Lay, and they are reunited with this kid, which is kind of an amazing story in and of itself. They're distraught. They fly back to their base. He reports this along with other pilots and crew to their superiors, and this is where kind of another separate chain of why didn't someone keep investigating this, right? They don't. But he reported it. It's very clear. He will be awarded a Distinguished Flying Cross for his actions that day. Okay? And what's interesting about this is that all the testimony, the paperwork for the Distinguished Flying Cross, all the testimony from people who witnessed and whatever, none of them mention anything about enemy action, enemy fire, no sort of hostile stuff. But when he gets the citation and he has to sign off on it, he signs off on the paperwork. Okay? It says, while there was intense crossfire. Okay? And he agreed to that. In other words, they bought him off with the Distinguished Flying Cross. And after that, he drops it. Now, later, when they come back to him, the investigators, he changes his tune. He chunks the Distinguished Flying Cross, kind of figuratively throwing it back at the Pentagon Gate, that sort of thing. He says, no, there wasn't any crossfire. None of that. When he testifies before a congressional committee, before the trial starts, several congressmen jump all over him for being un-American, unpatriotic, for interfering with the Constitution, stuff like that. It was just amazing what they did. He will later be awarded the Soldier's Medal. He and Colburn, Andreotti was killed in a helicopter accident later in the war in the 1990s. And the Soldier's Medal is the highest award for valor non-combat. Okay? So they gave him the appropriate honor for what he did. But he and Colburn are probably two of the cleanest guys that come out of this deal. And they're not totally clean. That's what's kind of weird about it. So we have a lot of this, what we rely on. Now I'm going to show you these photographs real quick, and then we'll stop and we can talk some. I'm not going to get through all of this, which is fine. Be warned, I'm going to show you the pictures that Haverly took of the bodies. Some of you guys in the class have already seen these, you know what's coming, but just be warned, these are very disturbing photographs. Okay? This is My Lay that morning. First ship's coming in. Got the artillery smoke in the landing zone. There's My Lay itself. You can see right there, there's flame. That's those errant artillery shells that landed long. Okay? So some civilians got hurt or killed with that. So when they said in the report, oh yeah, our errant artillery, well that happened, but it was a convenient thing to happen to kind of cover for the other stuff. Landing, moving in, and this is very typical. This is stuff you see all the time, right? I mean, in any Vietnam documentary, footage, photograph, movie, I mean, this is standard fare. It looks like an operation against expecting hostile action. His Uncle Sam camera, taking a black and white photo there. These guys moving in across the rice paddies, clearly on edge. They get in. Their orders were very clear, actually to destroy. So destroy the houses, destroy any foodstuffs, anything that the VC can use. And again, pretty standard stuff. Didn't happen all the time, but it happened. Right? The classic, we had to destroy the village to save it, Peter Arnett's made up thing. he said. I'm convinced he made that up. I don't think he actually did somehow. But then they ran in and started running into this. Okay? So Haverly and Roberts are together, basically, most of the time. When they started seeing this and started seeing some guys shoot people, they got really nervous and really scared. They knew he knew he had to take pictures of it. But he didn't want anybody other to really see him take pictures of it because they were afraid that they would turn their guns on them and just gun them down. And even after it was over, he didn't want to do anything. He waited until he was out of service to even show some people these pictures. And even then, nobody really knew what they were until the investigators came and talked to him a year and a half later. And again, like I told you guys in the class, right? They're in the Holiday Inn in Cleveland, talking to him, and he kind of says, "Oh, I actually have some pictures." And Colonel Wilson was sitting there going, "What? You have photographs of this? I was hoping this was a hoax, that this wasn't true." And to that point, I was still kind of really hoping this wasn't true. But if you've got pictures, then we got a whole different ballgame. And when he showed him these photographs, which I'm showing you, he was convinced, the investigators were convinced this actually happened. This was a real thing. Again, this is probably the most, to me, one of the most disturbing, haunting ones, because Haverly takes this picture of this group of women. Got the matriarch here. Their kids, and they're hiding behind her. She knows. I mean, she knows. The girl here has already been sexually molested. You can see her kind of trying to get dressed again. That happened. There's several incidents of sexual assault in this deal. And Haverly takes the photograph, and he said he, took the picture real quick, turned, walked a few paces, heard a burst of M16 fire, turned around, and they were all dead. And so what you're looking at there again is their last moments, which is pretty dramatic. This kid, wounded, severely wounded, mortally wounded. I mean, there's no way he'd be saved. Haverly saw him, took the picture, looked at him, so there's nothing we can do for this kid, walked away because he thought someone else would come along and hopefully give him aid. Which was, someone else came along and shot him. Now, the guy who shot him claimed, several people saw him shooting, claimed that it was a mercy kill. There's no way this kid was going to live, and I couldn't stand it anymore, so I put a bullet in his head to just put him out of his misery and our misery so we can move on. And that was probably true. This one, again, I showed you guys in class, this old man was bayoneted and thrown into the well. And some say they dropped a couple of grenades in it afterwards, some not. Who knows? It doesn't look like it. But that's Haverly taking a picture of him. You see his reflection there, which is a pretty dramatic, unintended kind of effect there. Again, the bodies all over the place smoldering. So, I mean, you can't kind of not say it didn't happen with that sort of evidence. Herb Carter here shot himself in the foot. He's the only casualty in My Lay that day. There's other casualties in Alpha Company and Bravo Company that day. But My Lay, he's the only one in My Lay. He claims he was cleaning, the gun, the pistol jammed. Guy borrowed his pistol, went and shot a couple of people, threw it, jammed, threw it back at Carter. Carter's sitting there like tears in his eyes, like what's going on, trying to unjam his pistol and shoots himself in the foot. That's what he claimed. A couple of people around him said, yeah, that's what he was doing. Other couple of people around him said, nah, he did it on purpose. I wish I would have done that. Right? So again, you have this Carter thing, what really happened. What's incredible about it his Purple Heart citation, the paperwork for it, when it lists cause of injury, right, you have to put in there as specific as possible what, hostile enemy fire. That's what it says. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No self-inflicted. Accident or not. Self-inflicted, right? New York Times, Task Force Barker kills a bunch of Charlie. That's what we read. That's what we believed for over a year until the story broke. These are radio logs. Another thing we look at the brigade and division level. They're Tactical Operations Center radio logs. So they record every time there's a radio transmission reporting something, it's recorded. What's interesting is they all jive. So no one went back and doctored these things. In other words, they were lying on the ground. They were telling lies on the ground. Okay? It's not like someone went back later and erased to change the numbers. They told lies on the ground. So it started at the get-go. So I say that to you as a point of reference in the cover-up part. If you're a guy at the brigade level or somewhere else in the chain, and someone beneath you gives you this report, it looks pretty normal. It doesn't look overly unusual. Yeah, I wish we had a few more weapons, but okay. You don't question it. You just send it up. So in other words, you didn't realize what you were doing, that you're now part of the cover-up. You didn't think this was fishy enough to do a further investigation or double check or something like that. So, they went back, of course, a year and a half later to the site. A lot of Vietnamese survivors were there, a lot of testimony from Vietnamese survivors, stuff like that. That's Medina and F. Lee Bailey. Another one of the just completely grotesque photographs of the Vietnam War. Esquire did a lot of stories on Calley, his life stories, stuff like that. Paid him a lot of money, and to have him posed there with a bunch of Vietnamese children was just, it's obscene. It's really something. That's Calley a couple of years ago in Columbus, Georgia, speaking to the local Kiwanis Club for the first time. He's really come out to say something. I don't know why he agreed to do this, but he lived in Columbus, Georgia for a long time. He now lives in Atlanta. He said to the people there that he brought up My Lay. He said that he thinks about it every day and that he's sorry. But he also added that they were following orders. He still doesn't get it. It's kind of amazing. Calley's the only one convicted. He's charged with killing 109. I don't know how they came up with that number. It's still a mystery to me. Convicted of killing 22. Again, I don't know how they come up with that number. I think they did some averaging or something in the jury. Tried to come up with something. He's given a life sentence by the jury and the trial judge. The way the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, works, the convening authority, the general that convenes the court-martial at that post, can override the sentence, change the sentence, whatever. That general bucks it down to 30 years, not life, but to 30 years. You gotta remember, he's the only one, and by this point, he's become a folk hero, a fall guy. If you were against the war, you see him as kind of an unfortunate martyr, kind of a fortunate victim of this thing. If you're for the war, you're all for Calley. He did his duty. He killed the enemy. Jimmy Carter, governor of Georgia. Everybody turn on your headlights. Support Calley Day. Okay? And he goes to the Secretary of the Army. The Secretary of the Army, under some pressure from the Nixon administration, because Nixon's reading the tea leaves, right, bucks it down to 10 years. Now, by that point, Calley had been under arrest. House arrest. He lived in an apartment there in Fort Benning under house arrest. He could have parties and barbecues and stuff like that. He dated his future wife while he was under house arrest during the trial. He bucks it down to 10 years. At 10 years served, a 10-year sentence, you're eligible for parole at 3.5 years. So just a few weeks later, He's paroled. He walks. Now, by that stage, you're talking, by that point, it's actually 1974. Watergate, and just all this other stuff going on. We're out of Vietnam. Nobody cared. Let's just be done with it. Like we should be done with this stuff. I'll stop there. Thank you. Please ask me questions. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My question is, like this isn't the first and won't be the last incident of soldiers, I apologize for my understatement, misbehaving.
Sure.
But did the gruesome nature of this incident, did it change the way the military handled going forward from incident?
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. The Army conducted several studies in the early 70s to try to figure out, what happened here? How did Calley get through the system? And what they found was that the system worked. I mean, Calley went according to the system. There was nothing really wrong with the system. It was just this guy, at the time, he didn't know, right? And what they did do was there were a lot of legal changes. One of the biggest ones, Congress changed the jurisdiction law to now say in the UCMJ that if you go out of service, you're honorably discharged, but then you're discovered to have committed a crime while in service, you can now be held. And it doesn't have to be under a military court. You're actually in the federal court. Federal courts have jurisdiction over it. That is still true today. That's a direct result of Mai Lay. So that changed. And we've seen that in the Iraq and Afghanistan, especially with contractors who committed crimes. Contractors who committed crimes in Vietnam, you get deported. That's about all they do to you. They got away with all sorts of things. Okay? In Iraq and Afghanistan, no, not so much. Federal courts can try it. And that has happened. Okay? But the fear was, and one of the great quotes of the early 70s was by one general who said, there may be over 1,000 Calleys in our army. Yeah. How do we find them? How do we prevent this from happening again? Of course, they did all the usual things, right? They ramp up the training for every unit. Instead of spending 60 minutes on atrocities and war crimes and the Geneva Convention, we're now going to split into 120 minutes on, right? Check that box. And that's true today. The law of war training and stuff, I think, still today is probably not what it ought to be. People know it. They're trying to get more time. Gee, you already got all this, pulled. You're being pulled all over the place during training. You got to stop and spend time on this stuff. But you should. So that was sort of war crimes reporting was streamlined. They, senior commanders, mid-level commanders were really hammered with war crimes reporting, things like that. It was made real clear that you don't report this stuff. It's found out later that you didn't do what you're supposed to do. You're done. And that was the case with the guys in the cover-up. Even though none of them were convicted, right, served jail time, their careers were over. Coster at the time, when they finally get to him, he's superintendent at West Point. Yeah, talk about yeah. Well, he's one of Westmoreland's buddies. Okay. But he's bucked down a few grades. He's actually bucked down to colonel, I think, from 3-star general to colonel and cashier, basically, sent out. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've been to Mai Lay.
Yeah.
And I've been to I went back to Vietnam 3 years ago, and it's kind of Mai Lay is kind of like a dog and pony show now.
Yeah, it's like an amusement park.
Well, they bring kids in, they do all kinds of stuff. We have to see the film on the helicopter pilot coming in and stopping things. But I don't know what a lot of people's ideas are. People think of Mai Lay, but you also have to think about the fact that North Vietnamese came in the Way City and killed 3,000 or 4,000 people.
Boom.
And every time we went on every time we went on a county fair, which was going through and doing stuff, doing medical stuff, everything, the VC and NVA would come in and kill the kids and everything. So I mean, there are atrocities going on all over
Absolutely.
the place.
No, absolutely.
And with 1968 was such a that you can't. It'd be like going through the Detroit riots, and the only way you know it is if it's going through it.
Right.
And in 1968 was such a fast-going year, and we were losing. Our casualties were either light, medium, or heavy. That's what it said in the Stars and Stripes.
Right.
I mean, so we were losing people all over the place.
It's
The
the bloody
booby traps, 155s, everything. And you just, Mai Lay was an atrocity.
When you're there, it'd be like you see the kind of how they restaged it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
the dummies and the fake dead livestock and all that. I mean, it's really kind of bizarre.
But you know, one of the most amazing things I saw when I went back in country, we were in, I think it was Quang Tree, and we had dinner with the former NVA colonel, now mayor of Quang Tree. And we sat down there, and first thing he said, we're not going to talk about what we did during the war, we're going to talk about what we did after it.
Yeah.
So we all took pictures with him and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
No, fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the memory thing is interesting. You know, the way for a long time the Vietnamese government, the North Vietnamese government, now the Vietnamese government after the war, wouldn't do anything with Mai Lay. The locals wanted memorials and things like that, but because of that very thing. You start doing that, and someone's going to bring up Way and some of his other stuff. And it took a long time for them to allow what you see in Mai Lay today. Yeah, absolutely.
Like this gentleman here had a
Yeah,
question.
sorry.
He didn't get at it. Let me go ahead.
You know, from your perspective, and everyone's entitled to their own opinion, with your studies and the overview,
Right.
let's make you God, judge, jury, and executioner. What should the
I enjoy that
county- What would you justify for the proper punishment for the 10th county?
He should have been executed.
Really?
Yeah. Now, that's if I was king for a day, and that's what I could do. Those guys should have been executed. We executed Nazis. We executed Japanese guys. We executed Yamashita. He didn't even do anything. It's because he should have known it was happening, right? And under that logic, Coster should have been tried and executed. Even Westmoreland. I mean, even at the time when all this broke, some guys were saying, Telford Taylor, guys like that were writing that, you guys better watch it, because the standard we established for this sort of thing could go all the way up to Westmoreland. Now, that's unrealistic in actual, wasn't going to happen. There's no way in God's green earth you were going to execute any American soldier in Vietnam.
That's your opinion.
It wasn't going to happen. It was not going to happen. It's too politically dicey, especially after 1968. There's no way. There's no American soldier is executed under trial in Vietnam.
So that's the same opinion. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
Okay? So with that same application, and you named people like Westmoreland, how many do you think with that same application would have been executed in a Nuremberg type trial?
Oh, if you had that sort of situation?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it would. I mean, you would have had Calley, the other guys who did the killing. You probably could have convicted 4 or 5 of those other guys, I think.
So they should
Okay,
have had.
so there's 6. Medina, convict him. He should have known by the Washington standard, right? Henderson, Barker's already dead. Then you get to and I think Coster. Now that's if you follow what we did in World War II.
Do we deserve a jury of our peers, or do we deserve a civilian jury that hasn't been there? Do we understand, recon by fire?
That's why we have the military justice system and you have a military jury.
So he had a military jury.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you don't think that was fair?
Oh, no, not that wasn't fair. That's just what I think should have happened to them. I mean, they should have been. But, the juries, almost every one of all the juries, and we're basically only talking about 3 trials that actually got to the jury stage. Medina, Henderson, and Calley. Everybody on those juries were combat veterans in Vietnam. The Henderson jury, window dressing. They weren't going to convict him of anything because he didn't pull a trigger. They didn't like the Yamashita standard. They didn't want to deal with that, so they just chucked it. And they actually, a couple of guys afterwards claimed, we decided real quick we were going to quit him, but we thought it would look bad if we came back too quick, so we kind of hung out for a while to make it look like we were deliberating and struggling with it. Okay. Medina's took a little longer. Their jury was out for a while. They really struggled, really over whether or not he killed the woman. But as far as him being able to stop it and that sort of thing, he actually did give an order eventually to cease fire. What his problem was the cover-up part. He didn't report it. The problem with him, even though he's still in uniform, by that stage, the statute of limitations on that particular article violation had expired. They couldn't do anything to him on that.
So should he had a military trial or a civilian trial?
Military. All of them had military trials.
Should have he had a civilian trial?
No, he should have had a military trial.
Are you not judging him by civilian standards?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, my opinion is...
It's a capital offense, according to the articles of the CMJ.
Well, he was tried under the capital offense, and he was given the sentence he was given.
True.
But you were recommending a different sentence.
Yeah.
You asked his opinion.
Yeah, you asked my opinion.
Oh, I'm just
That's what I'm
asking.
telling you.
I'm thinking public opinion is changing.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
thinking we
sure.
got an all-volunteer army.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and going back to your terms, this man had...
We executed, in World War II, we executed over 330 servicemen for various crimes.
I mean, it was an atrocity.
Without a lot of hesitation. I mean,
I
but
think
Vietnam's a completely
I
different
think
thing.
at least
You can't-
80% of what you're saying is true.
I hate to push it
appreciate
along.
that.
We've got some more questions, and we're running out of time. We
Yeah.
were here, and then Tyler, and up here, so let's go.
Yeah.
Bill, I hate to say this, but you're going to have to try to be brief.
Well, I just wondered what drew you to this and to produce your book. If
I'm just one sick.
you wanted to understand it
No,
better.
and I got into it with the military justice book. Of course, the war crimes was the atrocities. What do you do with those? How are they handled during the war? How are they investigated? Things like that. So I got into it through that. And I did not intend to do a book on MUI. Exactly what I did the book on military justice with Kansas. Johns Hopkins approached me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to do a book on MUI." And at first I was kind of like, all right, fine. And did it. And I was glad I did it, but it was very difficult to do, in part because of the parameters of the series the book is in. Okay, it can only be so many thousand words long, and it needed to be probably twice what it is to really get at it. And so it was difficult to write from that perspective as an exercise. But after a while, I'll be honest with you, you start dreaming about it, stuff like that. It starts messing with you. But there's a good moonshine that's made in North Carolina called Cat Daddy. It's a spiced moonshine. Mix that with a little Diet Coke while you're writing.
Right here.
I don't know.
I can't connect the dots between what I would think from what you've described as marginal intelligence before this unit went into the village. The pep talk that Medina gave to the troops and the leadership of Calley, or lack of leadership, and the fact that there were individual groups of soldiers, individual parts of this village doing the same sort of
Right.
behavior. I just don't see how all these groups, was this coordinated?
It wasn't
What
coordinated. That's the
strange
thing.
psychological
It's
thing
not. That's
explains-
what's so weird. It's not coordinated. For Calley, it is coordinated because he thinks, for him, he thinks he's following orders. So he's telling his guys, round these people up, put them in this ditch, shoot them. Okay. There's other guys going around
Thinking the same thing.
just thinking this, but for some of those guys, it's malicious. I mean, it's pure maliciousness. I mean, they're going out there, and I mean, this one guy, he gathers a group of girls together, makes them strip down, naked, and he's gonna molest them. But there's too many other guys around, and he kind of gets pissed off, and he's got a grenade launcher, and he steps back a few paces and pumps 2 grenades into them.
This is like
And so it's like, well, wait a minute. What? How does that action jive with what Calley's doing? Because they're two completely different motivated things, right?
But it's like an individual committing a crime. He's been a model citizen, and all of a sudden his behavior goes off in a different way. But then you
There's the scary thing.
Groups.
Okay, at the very end of this, and I didn't really write about this in the book because I just didn't want to go there. But I mean, when I got done with all this thing, I went to talk to my dad about it. It's like what this really tells me is deep down in all of us, we have the capability to do something like this, and that is a dark, cynical thing to even think, right? But you start thinking about that because there's nothing that says any of these guys were any different than anybody else.
Tyler?
You mentioned
Anyone up
Thompson
here?
landing that small helicopter, and then
Yes.
when he left to go refuel, he told Hueys. Did he tell the Hueys to watch what the actual troops were doing, or was he trying to tell them to get in the way of the troops? I mean, you did.
No,
touched on it,
he
but you
didn't say get away. He said, hey, we need to get these people out of here.
So it was he.
There's
got
some of
the,
them are wounded. Let's get their civilians.
Okay.
Let's get them out of the way. Thompson, what he claims is for part of this time, he still thinks there's a hostile situation going on. Brief for a while. But then after he sees the guys turn around and shoot him, then he's like, okay, this is not. Let's try to get some of these people out of here.
so it's more if he tries to land the Hueys to evacuate people.
Yeah.
Than watch the troops.
You can
and
actually,
shoot them.
we actually have transcripts of the radio traffic
Okay.
from the helicopters. And so it's all in there of him saying, hey, or calling this one guy, come down, pick these people up, I'll be right here. This kind of weird situation going on down here, not sure what's really happening. He takes off, and there's several times where you see him and a couple other pilots will say something like, there's a lot of killing going on down here. What are they doing down there? What's going on down there? Something, I just saw a couple American soldiers gun down a bunch of people. What's happening down there? They're flying around in the air, going in their counterclockwise circle pretty quick, but at low altitude, and trying to see, and what they're just like, wait a minute, what's happening? I mean, incredibly confused. So,
Unfortunately, this is going to have to be our last question.
yeah.
Mine was parallel to his, but I'll go back to his beginning, was the reconnaissance. What was brought out, somebody must have...
Somebody guessed wrong.
Somebody just guessed? I mean, they
Look,
didn't observe DC there? Or
It's a classic thing, and we talk about this a lot at the War College. When does information become intelligence? Okay? So you got all this information. You've got all this activity. There's been spottings. There's been contact with Viet Cong. The 48th Battalion, from people you've captured, documents you've captured. That's who it looks like is around there. And then you put all that together, and then it becomes, you try to reach some sort of conclusion, and then it becomes intelligence. So their intelligence their conclusion is, the 48th Battalion is over there. It's got to be there. We haven't seen it anywhere else. All the things point to it being there. Let's go in and get them. And all the Vietnamese, survivors, when they were interviewed later, said, "Oh no, they cut out the night or two before. Most of them were gone. There was only a handful left." Now, some of the helicopters shot a couple of Viet Cong that morning who were trying to flee southward. There was only 2 or 3. They were armed, And they had rifles and stuff like that, so I mean, they were legitimate targets. But the rest of them had fled northward and blended into the hills north of there. And they weren't there. The other intelligence failure was this idea that everyone was going to be away to the market that morning. And I'm not sure if that was actually then at the time. But the problem is, this is people remembering a year and a half later saying, well, they weren't supposed to be there. And that's the only place that shows up. There's nothing in the documents before that makes any indication that everybody went away to market at 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, people are out working in the fields. People go to other villages to work. People come to Mai Lay to work. So there's people out and about, just like normal. But the idea that they'd all be gone, several people say, oh, we were told they would all be away at 7:30, gone. And anybody there would be Viet Cong. Of course, how do you tell Viet Cong from somebody else, right?
Combat experience?
Yeah. Most of them did. Most of them did. They've been in other, been there before. Yeah. And there's a couple of NCOs who are directly involved in killing and sexual assaults. Yeah.
I hate to cut this off, but I must. I did not say thank you. I do want to say thank you to Jessica from the Lourdes bookstore, who is out at the entrance. If you do wish to buy a copy of the Mai Lay book, An American Atrocity in the Vietnam War, it is for sale out there. I'm going to ask Bill to go straight from here to the table. If you have questions, please stop and ask him there. And if anybody wishes to buy a book and you wish to have the author autograph it, he can do so. Thanks again for coming. Appreciate it very much. You have a good evening now.
Thank you for coming. I know it's a dire, dreadful topic. Come out and hear about it.